Hey everyone, welcome to the Joomla Chat conference. I'm Steve Burge and I'm your host for the 3 days of the conference. I'm delighted that you guys are here. I wish that all of us would have been in London this weekend for the Joomla World Conference, but I hope that we'll be able to fill the gap to some extent with some really interesting Joomla presentations over these 3 days. And Dimitris's presentation right now is one of the ones I'm most looking forward to over the course of the conference. Dimitris is one of the most innovative developers in Joomla. When it comes to putting things in Joomla for the first time, his name is normally attached. I think his latest was putting web components into the Joomla core for the first time. And he's going to be talking about all the JavaScript goodness that is coming to Joomla 4. Dimitris, welcome. I'm delighted to have you with us.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for, first of all, for hosting all this event. Guessing it's very important. As you said, unfortunately, we don't have Joomla World Conference this year, so this I hope will act as balancing act. So my name, as Steve said, is Dimitris. These are my Twitter handler and my GitHub handler. So if you want to post the question either here in the chat or in the Twitter, I will be happy to answer. So I was involved with Joomla for some time, and I'm about to just present the good parts that are coming with Joomla 4, because there was some tremendous work by many people, and we have to be very respectful for all these people that put so much time to contribute all these nice features. Mainly because I used to be the leader of the JS group for a couple of years or so. And because there's some frustration about all these upcoming changes, I thought I will clear up a few topics. So I will be talking a little bit about vanilla JavaScript, why Joomla is moving away from jQuery, how that affects you as a developer or implementer, and what are the benefits for the ultimate beneficiary, which is always the final user. I will be talking also a little bit about ES 2015 Plus, that is the latest language, the latest incarnation of the JavaScript language. For those that they don't know, they don't follow the changes in that space, is that every year ECMAScript, the organization that holds everything about JavaScript, is doing one release, and they're naming the releases after each year. So we have ES 2015, 16, and currently we are at 2019, and 2020 is coming in, I think, about 6 months. I want to talk a little bit about the build scripts, something that I've introduced as a helper tool for the Joomla maintainers, basically, and that has been transformed a lot over time. So let's understand what they are doing and how to use them for your own profit. Yes, you can use those things. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about web components. Already Steve mentioned those, but this is a huge topic, so probably we should have one talk just for those. But I'll try to cover the most important question, which is what are they, and maybe why you should care about these technologies. So let's dig into vanilla JS. So back in 2014, when I began my involvement with the Joomla 4 project, there wasn't any consensus or even an idea for dropping jQuery and move to vanilla JavaScript. Although I started complaining a little bit about that we could replicate almost all of the JS functionality, it was the time that everybody was moving away already from jQuery. So yeah, the idea was that we can replicate the same JavaScript functionality without depending on jQuery. The production team at that time was largely against it, sometimes publicly. But nevertheless, they've accepted the middle ground and they say, okay, new scripts should be vanilla. And that was a decision that was extremely important for the team that was working in the front end at that time. And that was Charlie Loader, Karen Gross, and me, basically. So this team of 3 people start introducing all the new scripts as vanilla.js with no other dependencies, etc. That work alone became a huge task, and we ended up almost rewriting everything in the front end. Most of the times, because there were still arguments, there was still too much discussion going on in the social media, and the arguments were, at least from our part, from our side, was look how faster vanilla scripts are compared to jQuery. But that was a false argument, although it was totally true. The real argument was and still is that the web has moved from desktop to mobile, and for low-end devices, jQuery becomes a real obstacle in the user experience. Quite frankly, the flexibility that the library provided to the developers becomes a really big tax that the end user has to pay. To put it simply, whenever you, as a developer, use jQuery, you degrade the final product and you're referring the bill to the final user. Developer conveniences, of course, there are fine, and we should have many of those. Otherwise, we make our own life very miserable. But as long as they don't degrade the user experience and they don't transfer the final bill to the end user. Of course, the time, it was around 2015. And that was also the time that many changes in the JavaScript was happening. I said earlier that, yes, 2015, it was the first new incarnation of the language, the first new version of the modern JavaScript that we have. So that was also coming into play, and we had also to find a solution how to figure out to do the JavaScript for the old JavaScript, the new thing that was upcoming. I'm not going to give you a lot of insights about how to use vanilla.js, but I want to share some useful links. So this, you might not need jQuery.com. It's a very good website where you can figure out, if I have this code, what's the equivalent of vanilla. Vanilla.js, I think I already shared one screen. It's just comparing Vanilla.js to jQuery and see which one is better and faster. Plain.js is a list of, and this is very important, you should note this link, is a list of all the plugins that you can find as Plain.js. So basically, if you had or used, let's say, an accordion or whatever in jQuery, and you like to see if you can find something similar in Plain.js, most of the times, if that was good enough, you will find it, and most probably you will find it in plainjs.com. Also, you have to remember that when you're talking about JavaScript, most of the things are already published in the Node Package Manager, npmjs.com. And the final resource is that if it's open source, most probably it will be somewhere in the GitHub repository. Right. So let's talk a little bit about the build tools. The build tools started as a simple script ground script that will help the maintainers to update the assets dependencies in a simple way. At the beginning, it was just a way for the three people, me, Karen, and Charlie, just to keep Bootstrap in sync and have the latest version of jQuery. We were still using jQuery at that point. At that time, Bootstrap 4 was on an early alpha version, and things were constantly changing. And it was very painful time because it was breaking changes every time. So every time you had to rewrite everything. So the whole idea behind the build tools was just keeping a simple package JSON as the only source of truth. So we knew that we all were in the same version of Bootstrap and whatever. And to give credits where appropriate, the Joomla 4 build tools were based on the excellent work of Eliza Maiden and his awesome code for packaging CodeMirror. CodeMirror is the alternative editor to TinyMCE that is available in Joomla 3 and also in Joomla 4. Of course, things weren't obvious right from the beginning. So we had to roll different things like Karen and Charlie were basically working on the two templates, the backend template and then later on the front-end template. So they had to have some tool to compile the SAS. For anyone that doesn't know, Joomla 4 will not use less anymore, mainly because Bootstrap has moved from less to SAS. So we needed a tool that could compile the SAS files to CSS files. So basically, we were having a lot of tools, small scripts, basically, to do the work. And the whole idea with these build tools is to get all the things together, because having small tools inside each folder, it means that you have more node modules folders inside the other folders, and that gets too big too quickly and too complicated. Also at that time, we had the media manager project happening, an image of the media manager, I'm sorry. So the media manager introduced another level of complexity because it was based on the Vue.js project framework, and then the build tools were getting extremely complicated. At this point, the build tools are able to handle all the JS, SAS files from the three templates, the front-end template, the installation template, and the backend template. Also, they can handle your own template, and that's one thing that I would like to show you, because I said that you can profit from the work that already exists there. But they still don't handle media manager, and that was a decision that's still true. Okay, so before I go to web components, let's have a look at the build tools. The build tools, basically, it's just one entry file, which is called build.js, and it lies inside the root folder of the Joomla CMS repo. Basically, it has these 4 commands, which are documented here, which everyone, I think, is pretty explanatory, like build pages. This does create the error pages from the installation template. Copy assets. This is because we're getting all the assets through the Node package manager. This is how it works. So let me explain it more visually. So we have the package.json, where we have all the dependencies. So these are all the scripts that Joomla 4 depends on. So these files, once you get to do one npm install, they're gonna be grabbed and put locally into a folder called node modules. So basically, going back to the build.js, we have one command which says copy assets, which basically what it does is it goes into its node module that we have a dependency and get every file that is needed and puts it into a folder called vendor and whatever it is. Let's say for the bootstrap, it will copy all the CSS, it will copy all the JavaScript and all the SAS. And also, because we are nice guys, we get the license file as well. So this is the copy assets. So basically, it's just getting everything that is needed into the right folders. And then you have the two important parts, which is compile.js and compile.sas, which, as you understand, is that it will do something to the JavaScript, the .js part, and something to the SAS files, so you can get a CSS. Now I say something because it's more complicated. So for, let's say, the JavaScript part, which is very interesting, you get another very small script which handles that. And I say handles that because it's not one thing, the JavaScript in Joomla 4. In Joomla 4, because of the ES 2015 plus languages and the ES 5 scripts that already existed in Joomla 3, we had to have a way to distinguish which file is which, so we know how to handle it. So this is the important part, and this is how you will notify the build script that if it is in your JavaScript, you have to assign .es6.js, and that will automatically transpile the file to ES5 if you need to have the ES5. If you have an older file, a legacy JavaScript, ES5, and you denote with this extension the file, then the script basically will do something different. Basically, it will just copy the file to the right folder and just create the minified version for that file. Also, we have web components and custom elements. And in order for the build tools to understand that this is a web component and that it needs to be transpiled in order to get it for ES5 version, to get the ES5 version, you have to denote it as .w-c.es6.js. So basically, the thing is that in Joomla 4, we have a folder called build. Build modules.js is all these modules that I'm showcasing right now. And builds and media source is where all the files lie. All file exists there. So basically, if it's a web component, let's open a web component. This is a web component. And you just denote the file with .w-c.es6, and the build tool will do the right thing. If it's just an ES6 JavaScript, you just use that extension, and the build tools will do what is necessary. And to give you the third option, the ES5, let's say the bootstrap .init. So this is a legacy file, and it's denoted with .es5.js. So let's take this one. So the legacy, it will get this file from the build folder, and actually what we'll do is it will create the exactly same file as an unminified ES5 and a minified ES5. Same goes for the system that I showed you before about the Joomla core loader. So this is the ES6, and then you see that there is a notation here, does ES5 for the older browsers. Basically, it's just convention over configuration, if I say it correctly. So basically, you just denote what the file is, and you get the right thing without having to do anything more. So the build tools will handle all of the JS cases, all the JS files, and also they will handle things like the SAS files from your template. So they will figure out where is your template, your CSS SAS folder there. They will loop over that folder, and then they will create the appropriate CSS file here. They are not very clever, but they are extremely helpful. And so if you want to develop your own template, let's say you create another template here, if you follow the same pattern, you create a SAS folder and you put the files in there, you should be able to run the build scripts already in Joomla and get your SAS file right there without doing anything more. And also that goes without saying that if you're developing a module or a plugin or a component, you can still use this folder to store your component, module, plugin, etc. And then have all the magic that is happening for the core to also available for your own benefit. One thing that I need to address here is that Joomla is using a linter for the JavaScript. And I'm saying that because people were getting confused about how that thing works. So I just want to give a very quick demonstration. So the files here use not the tabs as the indentation mark, but the spaces. So basically I changed here specifically from spaces to tabs, and now you see that I have an error already in my ID that says, okay, there is an error. If your ID is not set up with ESLint, which most probably you shouldn't have it, or it's fine. There is a very easy command, npx space ESLint space dot, which will search all the JavaScript files for errors, and it will come up with the list. Basically, you already see it here, which says that line 8, column 1, it found an unexpected tab character. Basically, it says that, you know what, we're using spaces. So if you do that and you save the file and you run that, you're good to go. What Joomla is using for the linter in the code is very easy. You can find it in package.json. So if you check the ESLint, you see that there is this ESLint config.airbnb. So if you just do a small search, it will show you that it's an npm package, of course, and it is a project from Airbnb. It's the most popular linter right now. Everybody's using that. All the documentation is here, but quite honestly, you don't need it. Just type the command, press enter, and follow whatever it complains about, and you will be fine. Since we are here, let's have one example about what this vanilla JS is and why people are getting confused with that. So in the jQuery era, we used to have things like that, $sign or jQuery, and then you put some class or whatever your selector was, like that, and then you could do many things after that, like add class, whatever, something. So the thing is that with vanilla you can do exactly the same. So instead of having this $sign, parentheses, etc., you have to write a bit more. So you have to write document.query selector, and that's only if you want the first element, or document query selector all if you want every element that matches the class or any CSS selector. Basically, you can have this, or you can have like this, or like this. So anything that works for CSS will work also here. So you can do whatever you want. Basically, it works as jQuery. The platform actually just took what jQuery had and brought it to the platform. So there are some mild differences, but as you see here, like to add the class, the jQuery part was just add class, and the vanilla is that you get the element and then you get the class list, because that's an array, and you say add something more to that array. Or you can have remove, or you can have toggle, which basically there are almost one-to-one to what jQuery used to be. Right, and since we are here, let's look also to the newest version of JavaScript. I'm not going to go very deep here, but the only thing that I want to showcase is that instead of var, that used to be the old notation to declare variables, we have either const, or you can have a let there. Let means you can change the value. If it's const, it means that it's constant. It means it cannot change. You can have distraction. So basically, you get the value from the object in a different way than used to be in ES5. Other important part is that functions can be noted like that, like parentheses, that symbol, whatever that is fat arrow, they call it, and then the curly braces. And that's exactly like the old notation was exactly that. So it's just different notations, not that the language is totally different. Also, you have imports and exports, and that is the very important part, because whenever you have import and export, it means that the file acts as a module. Now, this is a little bit interesting, because when the type is module, it means that whenever you put a file like that, it means that the file is by default strict. And also the other part is that in the older days, we used to have something like it called IFI. So basically you had to do something like that, and then you say self-invoking. So, and that was to encapsulate, in a sense, You're not encapsulating, but not declare everything as global variables. And that is what is happening here. Also, what is very important is that whatever exists inside the fat arrows, the curly braces, is not exactly the same as it used to be in ES5. It's a bit overrated, but yeah. The good part is that you can write either ES5 or ES6 code. It doesn't really matter for Joomla because we have the tools. Okay, we have the tools to convert ES6 to ES5, ES new to ES5, but not the other way around. But anything can go because we used to have like complaints that why do we have to write these new things? Anyways, so I have one more thing to show you, and that is the web components. Right. So web components are platform-supported technologies. What that means, they are part of the platform, the specs that define the web, or simply put, what browsers are obliged to support. The idea behind them is that the platform should have a way to support the component module. Although there is quite some controversy about them, you have to realize that they are widely supported. I think that with the new Edge Chromium, which is coming, I think, January 2020, all the browsers will support them. So it's a technology that is here and won't go anywhere for the years to come. It's a huge topic, so I'm gonna cover things in a hurry. So web components consist from three technologies, basically. It's the HTML templates, the custom elements, and the shadow DOMs. There are some. I'm gonna leave this a little bit because there are three nice links from Mozilla MDN and the developers.google, and also CSS-tricks that explain in every detail all the aspects about web components. So if you really want to dig into them, please spend some time and read a little bit on those. What I would like to do is to give you an idea of how a web component looks like, because people are getting frustrated. So a web component basically is a custom element. And the custom element is just a class, which extends another class, which is HTML element, which is the basic element that everything that you build on for the browser is based upon, like div or lists, UL, OL, or elements inside the list, li, or spans or buttons or input. All of these are basically a class that extends an HTML element. Classes have a constructor. And what's interesting with the custom elements is that they have lifecycle events like connected callback, disconnected callback. These are the very used ones. And then they have also a getter for observed attributes, where you say that I want to have an attribute color, and then you specify what is the getter and setter. What do you want to happen when you change the attribute color? And basically that's it. So the other part that I mentioned was the template. And this is how the template looks like as a code. Basically, it's an element, a template element, and you can have their styles and HTML markup. And then you can have all this template attached to shadow DOM, which is basically a way to say, okay, this will not be penetrated by the CSS, the external CSS that already exists in the document. How that is happening is very easy. You attach a shadow. It's like you say, okay, open shadow with mode on, and then you say on that shadow root, append a child, and then you just append your template. Or you can just have there any markup that you want, but it needs to be an actual node, document node. How it works, I think that you already have seen this if you ever did anything with Joomla 4. It's very easy. So that code that you saw, those, 65 lines of code, it's a simple spinner, basically. And you can see it in action right here. So whenever you change the category, you see this spinner. That spinner is a basic web component with very small footprint, very efficient. And the thing is, it doesn't depend on jQuery. It doesn't depend on anything strange. It's very easy to maintain because it's a platform. The code that you see here as a source is very close to what we end up having as a final code at the end. The only thing is that we have some styles here. And with that, I would like to say, if you really have some spare time and you are really curious about all this JavaScript, please join George Wilson. George is the leader for Joomla 4. Please join him because there are plenty of tasks that needs to be filled before Joomla 4 is published. And by that, thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dimitris. George is speaking in about 3 hours, I think, later on today.
Excellent.
Dimitris, I don't see any
questions
in the chat at the moment, but I have one. There's a new API coming to the core in Joomla 4. Do you think we'll see a JavaScript change or a JavaScript revolution of sorts on the front end as well? Will the API allow people to use different kinds of JavaScript, perhaps things like Gatsby, to work with Joomla on the front end?
Right. That used to be like a very big conversation that we used to have in the JavaScript group. As I already said, that the media manager is already based on Vue.js. But of course, Vue.js is not the only known good framework out there. There is React. There is the environment is very rich on what you can choose to build things. There are many frameworks based on web components. There are even frameworks that are built as a compiler, which is mind-blowing. There is one thin line that makes things very difficult for Joomla. And that thin line is that all these projects need Node. By saying they're needing Node is that they need Node to run on your actual server. So it means that unless we have a solution for the Joomla servers, I don't think that it will be very easy to roll an integrated system like Vue React or anything else.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much indeed, Dimitris. That was a a fascinating presentation, and I don't think anyone else could have delivered it in such detail and such depth. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much for doing all this event.
Well, thank you guys for attending as well. We have 4 more sessions today. We have George Wilson, in particular, that Dimitris mentioned. He is one of the leaders of the Joomla 4 and the Joomla project in general, and he is speaking later this afternoon. So I hope you guys can join us again later today or tomorrow for another session in the Joomla Chat conference. Thanks, everyone.